Hello, everybody. Welcome to the October 12th, 2023 meeting of the British Empire Study Group. Our presentation this evening is entitled The Devil's Mail. A warm welcome to everyone, and those of you who are with us for the first time. We meet online and all are welcome. Our group is made up of philatelists, postal historians, collectors, and non-collectors. We enjoy the social and technical aspects of learning and sharing diverse philatelic topics. We lean towards British Empire topics, but we observe a very liberal view of the British Empire. Even early US collectors can benefit from our presentations. A few comments about housekeeping. This is a webinar. The meetings are recorded and will be available on our website and on the YouTube channel, usually within a couple of weeks after the presentation. A reminder that in 2 weeks, on October 26, 2023, we will have a presentation by the one and only George W. Holshower. And now, without further ado, here to introduce our esteemed presenter, Stephen J. Berlin, is his grandson, Landon Spitzer.
How is everyone? I'm super excited to finally be able to show off this presentation with my grandpa, Dr. Stephen J. Berlin. It's been such an amazing experience getting to work alongside him and with such an amazing collection. And I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. The Devil's Mail is just a very special and unique collection of mail covers and philatelic history. So I'm just very excited for him to get the chance to share the Devil's Mail.
Steve, it's up to you.
Well, I'm glad you gave me the time to say something, Joan. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank my grandson, Landon, for introducing me. It's been a difficult 20 years trying to educate him to be a stamp collector. And I figured the best way to do that has been to have him type up my lectures and help me file my slides, and certainly understand all the covers that he's typed or read. And he will be a collector. I can assure you that down the road. And I really appreciate the opportunity of being the guest of the British Empire Study Group this evening. And I want to thank Joan Farmer very much for asking me to speak. I've enjoyed collecting stamps for, God knows, almost 70 years, to be frank with you. Started off as a young kid, like most of us do, and collected stamps till 07, and then I started collecting postal history. And my interest has varied over the years, but my main interest right now is interruptions of mail. And it involves pretty much any subject matter, and I collect from around the world. So that gives me the opportunities to find things that you don't find in your home country, particularly in the United States. And I'm happy to be here to speak with everybody and show you a little bit of my collection. And I can assure you it's just a small portion of what I currently have, as my grandson mentioned. My main areas, and I'd like to make this note before I forget, some of you that are listening know that I collect mail robbery, and that's a major subject of mine. And I'm in the current process of putting a book together, Mail Robbery Postal History. And my grandson, Landon, is also helping me with that, and I appreciate that. So without further commentary and thank yous, I guess we can start talking about the Devil's Mail. Well, what is the Devil's Mail? It's basically death and destruction that has limited the delivery of mail service around the world. So when I say that, you can think about all the postmen that have given their lives to the delivering of the mail, regardless of the conditions that we're in, whether it's war, whether it's earthquakes, whether it's floods, any types of natural disasters. The Postal Service is there to serve us and help us. And I really like to give them tremendous credit before I even start my presentation. In either case, the Devil's Mail represents significant obstacles to the smooth functioning of the Postal Service that I kind of mentioned. The Devil's Mail is metaphorically associated with chaos, calamity, as it brings about detrimental effects on the efficiency and effectiveness of the mail service infrastructure. This concept highlights the severe impact of external factors such as I mentioned, weather disturbances, military conflicts, unusual events, terrorism, and many other categories resulting in the disruption of the mail services. So these are the contents and the areas that I will be discussing this evening. I have several slides of certain issues. War is a very, very big topic, as we all know, and it's probably the most common area, you might say, with death and destruction as part of this talk. I would also like to say there's also going to be other items that's not so death and destructive, but also amusing. I had to throw a little humor into the overall presentation. But earthquakes, natural disasters such as volcanic eruptions, unusual weather disturbances and unusual events. Mail robbery is very limited in this presentation, but another time I'll have more. Fire, disease, and terrorism are the major factors that I will be discussing this evening. Well, I think to start off, I think in 1671, John Pyle, who was the captain of a ship in England, and he was basically traveling on a flat bottom boat, and he had some passengers. And apparently, while he was sailing, he had a very interesting description where he actually saw ghosts while he was leaving Newcastle with his ship. And then all of a sudden, since he saw the ghosts, he ran into trouble and he actually crashed the ship. Fortunately, the ship did sink, but they were all rescued by another boat that came by the following morning. So I thought the best slide to start would be a ghost slide. Kind of interesting. Well, we can also talk about the devil. Here's another cover dated in 1869, where we talk about volcanic West Virginia. It was a town about 12 miles outside of Parkersburg, West Virginia. It was an extinct community at the time, but when oil came shortly after the Civil War, the town boomed because oil was so close to the surface that it came up actually bubbling through the surface. And that's how it got its name, Volcano, West Virginia. In either case, it was an estimated 8,000 to 10,000 people were in this particular city at the time, until 1879, when a fire started, the volcano, possibly by arson, burning, or down a saloon, which ultimately caused the town to be destroyed. Green skulls and crossbone cancels are noted on this particular cover. Another significant issue was the earthquake or the volcanic eruption that took place in Martinique, and now Palais, Martinique. The left postcard is actually the ship, the HMS Valkyrie, that was actually on its way, basically unknowingly, heading to Mount Pelée, where the volcano eruption took place. The volcanic eruption basically took place around May 1902, which is on the second postcard, which carried Lieutenant H. Ed Hansen, who evacuated several hundred people from the volcanic eruption, which started on April 2nd, but intensified on May 7th, and it completely destroyed the island of Pierre. This disaster killed 29,000 people, with only 2 survivors. One of them actually was in a prison, in a concrete prison cell, where the fire and flames actually surrounded that area. He survived. 29,000 people died, and 15 ships were sunk in the harbor. This postcard was actually mailed from St. Croix with notes on board the ship that all were safe, of all the passengers that he was able to save. And it was backstamped from St. Thomas and also Frederiksted, U.S. Virgin Islands. Well, other disasters occur such as this particular one, the Titanic, the sinking of the Titanic. 10 April 1912, the HMS Titanic left Southampton with stops in Cherbourg and Queenstown, and then on to the United States. On its maiden voyage, unfortunately, on April 15th, while the ship's captain was trying to break a transatlantic speed record, he ignored the warnings from the crew that icebergs were sighted ahead. The ship sank in 12,000 feet of water. The postmaster of the ship was Mr. O.S. Woody. He was the postmaster. There was also a couple other male crew on the ship as well. But these are two facing slips that you see. And these were actually carried by Woody as he was trying to save the mail on the ship. There was hundreds of bags of mail on the ship. Unfortunately, none of it survived. The only thing that really survived were these facing slips. And the reason why they survived, they were in a plastic wrap in his vest pocket. And as he was floating dead in the icy waters, and when he was pulled out, these slips showing the ship bag in Boston and several other cities. There's over 12 of these known. The Wreck and Crash Mail Society did a study several years back, and we had that there could be as many as 20 of these particular slips from different parts, going to different parts of the United States. In either case, the Titanic was discovered in 1985 after sinking in 12,000 feet of water. Unfortunately, out of the 2,220 passengers, 1,500 of them perished. So there was only about 700 people that survived in the ships that were there to help them. This is a very interesting cover. It's not my cover, but I want to show it to everybody because chances are there probably isn't more than one or two people that are listening to me that even know it exists. This is due to the atomic blast that took place in Hiroshima on August 5th, 1945. The cover is slightly radioactive even today. It is in an amazing condition. Over 200,000 people died of the after effects after the American B-29 Superfortress dropped the bomb from the airplane known as the Enola Gay. And the atomic bomb was called Little Boy on Hiroshima. The cover was found near a bank in ruins in the city by the railway station as well. The cover has been placed in a very interesting lead sleeve covered with bulletproof glass. It's a very important historical document. The Hiroshima cover was the only postal item to survive the first atomic blast in 1945. The next bomb took place in Nagasaki on August 9th. Interesting, this cover was demonstrated at the ISBRA philatelic meeting in Essen, Germany this past May. This is where I became aware of this particular cover. And they had a price tag on it of $50 million. I thought that was very interesting. And but apparently there were no takers. It's still in the museum somewhere in Germany. 50 million. Well, let's talk a little bit more about war. This happens to be a balloon mail dated 24 November 1870. Siege of Paris. Mail involved in military conflicts are often due to political issues as well. But this cover interested me because it took off during the siege in very heavy, strong winds and fog. And as you know, I collect postal history related to weather in particular. But anyway, as it flew north, it came near the ocean level, and the waves, it had to jettison one bag of mail as the balloon was lowering. And one of the bags was recovered by a Norwegian fishing boat and turned over to the French Council in Norway. All the stamps on this cover have been lost because of the storm damage. But interestingly enough, this one particular flight of the Siege of Paris and balloon mail, set a record traveling 1,300 kilometers for a balloon. The secret letter was delivered to the government there, and there was a total of 24,000 French casualties in this war and 12,000 Germans during the siege. This is a very interesting cover, and there are many different balloon flights that are also very interesting, but this one particularly took my attention. The Spanish-American War was also another issue in 1898. This is a cover from New York to Madrid, Spain, and it was returned to W.J. Brennan because there was a blockade on all the mail. So it was returned, and it is a dispatch note in the right part of the letter or the cover that's basically states, return to sender, dispatch to Spain or colonies prohibited on account of the war. The U.S. declared the war on Spain in 28 April 1898, following the sinking of the battleship Maine in the Havana harbor on February 15, 1898. The U.S. victory ended Spain's colonial empire at the time and further compelled Spain to cede the sovereignties over Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Hawaii was also annexed during this conflict. A little over 280,000 U.S. sailors, Marines, and soldiers served in the Spanish-American War, but approximately a little over 2,000 casualties were unfortunately acquired or happened. This is a war cover, and this is a war between naturally South Africa and the British. And this is a siege cover on the Cape Town area of South Africa to come to Kimberley with a stamped post suspended. The siege lasted several months between the Boers and the British. When the siege was over, the Boers must have recovered several hundred bags of mail, besides going through the mail and taking all the benefits out of the mail, whether they be gifts, money, or whatever, took it, and then they set fire to much of the mail. The siege lasted, as I said, from 14 October to 15th of February, resulting in 134 casualties, along with 115 more deaths due to either disease or famine. This is another Boer cover dated 20 April 1900. The cover was sent from Bradford and addressed to a private in Pretoria. The letter was among mail that was captured by the Boers and shows signs of burning, and has a manuscript cancel found on the veld from mails looted and burnt by Boers in Pretoria. Around 75,000 lives were lost between the British, the Boers, and civilians from battle casualties and disease. I might mention that this is a very rare Boer cover, because seldom did you see actual writing as to what really took place in this particular area. Another interesting cover from the Mexico Civil War. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of covers on military issues and war. Not that they're the best covers, and they're probably the saddest covers because of all the death and destruction that takes place during this particular issue. War anywhere is not good, as we all know. But in either case, some interesting postal history does come out of it. And this is an interesting cover from Mexico to Texas in May of 1914. Unfortunately, it was interrupted, as much of the mail was interrupted from the Mexico Civil War between the US and Mexico. And this particular cover developed a nice little type label in Spanish, which states on the lower level of the cover, it was addressed to the office for delay due to the interruption of communications. And the communication interruption was greatly enhanced during this period of war. The war lasted almost 10 years, from 1910 to 1920, and it led to many, many deaths, between 2 and 3 million deaths. And these are why I call the devil's mail, because of all the death and destruction that takes place with much of the covers that I show. Here are two covers during World War I, both Russian, sent to London, and the upper cover was from Moscow, and they both are very similar covers, but if you can look at the bottom cover, you can see part of the mail captured by Germans and delayed. Both of these covers have that marking on it. And again, these are not uncommon covers, but it just goes to show you all the issues that take place in different types of war and different types of time in the early 1900s. World War I resulted in around 20 million deaths and 21 million people were wounded. That's just horrible numbers. Another one, World War II, where the British steamer Appam was traveling from Sierra Leone, Manchester, England, and was captured by the German raider Moe. German raider Moe had an interesting history. They loved to raid ships and steal whatever they can steal, like modern pirates of the military conflicts that we see. The steamer was carrying passengers, gold bullion, general cargo and mail from Nigeria and other areas, and it was posted in late 1915 or early January 1960. It was endorsed per Appam. She was retained by the raider as a prison ship and captured about 60 miles north of Madeira, Spain, on January 15, 1916. The ship was taken to Norfolk, Virginia, in charge of a German prize crew on February 1st, 1916. You can see the red MSS number, which is actually the notation in the prize court docketing number, which is in the upper left above the Messrs. Commentary. A black MS notation is also describes the incident. The interesting thing was they didn't get the money for the prize. The notation also described the incident, and afterwards, the U.S. government handed the mail and the ship over to the British because it was registered to the British as early as 1915. Interesting commentary. Another situation where a cover was sent on or about November 16th. It happened to be my birthday, November 16th, not 1916. I'm not quite that old. I may be old enough, but not quite that old. But it was carried from London, destined for Copenhagen. And this was another ship issue where the Arthur, a big battleship, was sunk by the German warship on the 23rd November, 1916. The stamps were washed off the cover. Red censor label was applied from Denmark. Postmaster's dated 30 November 1916 was applied, and it basically reads damaged by seawater. The ship was en route from Leith to Gothenburg when it was sunk, as noted on the red seal. There's only about 5 of these covers reported in the literature. Another situation, this was the Brazilian Civil War in 1935. An airmail cover from Rio de Janeiro to England, it was delayed on the Contour Zeppelin at the time. The cachet at the bottom, Wagen der Unruhen, so forth, Brazilian, I can't read all the German, but it translates as delayed due to unrest in Brazil, following the outbreak of a rebellion in that country. This letter was carried on the 3rd shuttle flight from Recife to Bathurst aboard the LZ-127 Graf Zeppelin. Estimated casualties in this war were somewhere between 5,700 and 6,200 people. Another interesting cover, just trying to, that was during the early part of World War I, when a cover was mailed from the United Kingdom to China and was damaged by Japanese planes during a bombing raid around September 17, 1939. This cover was salvaged from a mail van, interestingly enough. The typewritten note is also enclosed from the Standard Vacuum Oil Company, stating that they have seen several from this incident. This was from the first major battle that took place in World War II. Chinese characters were applied, as you can see, on the letter in a mail van. The recipient sent the letter back to him with an explanation note. China suffered around 20 million casualties, and Japan 3.1 million. Again, war causing major mass destruction and death. Another similar cover from World War II, it was Tobruk to Victoria, Australia. It was actually a siege cover that took place for about 4 months. The Germans could not break through and wound up evacuating the areas that they were fighting from at this particular time. Finally, on 10 November 41, as I mentioned, the siege was lifted, and when the Commonwealth Army forced the Germans to retreat, 39,656 Australian deaths occurred in this war. This is a very interesting cover. This was when it was bombed in Japan, in Hawaii, bombed the U.S. actually bombed the whole war took place in Hawaii initially when America entered the war. Yeah, Pearl Harbor. I'm just trying to think of Pearl Harbor. In either case, this is one of 2 covers that were taken off the ship USS Nevada. And the surprise attack took place at 8:10 in the morning by 360 Japanese aircraft on the American fleet at Pearl Harbor. And the ship sunk. Unfortunately, there was about 50 soldiers or naval personnel that were killed. They were very fortunate because 1,500 crewmen were on this ship. But a total of 407,000 American military deaths and around 12,000 U.S. civilian deaths occurred in this war. Over 70 million deaths occurred worldwide. This cover is one of 2 known, and it's probably one of the rarest covers involving this particular war, World War II. Another cover in World War II involving on November 17th, 1944, was a cover, an airmail registered cover from Switzerland to Stockholm. And it was on a Swedish plane, and the Lufthansa Wolf Condor was attacked and crashed after being shot down by a German aircraft. This was actually there's actually a lot of German people on this plane. So the Germans actually wound up shooting their own plane down. In either case, the explanatory label is reduced in the upper level corner. But it was affixed to reverse on the envelope. A German censor tape, as I mentioned, was applied. No one likes to get covers such as this from World War II or from any war. But this is a cover that was sent to an Irish Guard soldier, noting in the manuscript, deceased 29th, 1944, and signed. An additional box cachet, it is regretted that this item could not be delivered because the addressee is reported deceased. This is the letter that no one wants to get from any war at any time. What created a lot of the deaths were the missiles and bombs that the Germans were developing, dropping over France, England, and so forth and so on. This was in 1945, January 25th, where the actual areas where these rockets, where the V-2 rockets were made, was bombed. The Americans bombed this area. They knocked out one area in Peenemünde, but in Nordhausen became the subject of Allied air raids as they shifted the making of these bombs and rockets at a different location. and then the air raids completely destroyed these areas. (1780). A cover from St. Mary's, Jamaica to London by Dr. William Downs for the Emeritus Captain Peacock. This was a cover carried personally by Captain Peacock. The letter being addressed to Dr. Robert Moore. The letter described profitable medical practices in Jamaica at the time. It further goes on to state the recent inconvenience there due to recent earthquakes and violent storms and hurricanes. You can see why I collect these kind of covers, because they all kind of blend into the overall scenario of what I do collect. He goes on to say in this letter that violent shakes which destroyed several houses and other damage. He stated that the shock waves have been the severest earthquake since the terrible earthquake in 1692, when all of Port Royal was destroyed. A 2-line black Dover ship marking was applied. 9,000 deaths occurred in this particular earthquake and a hurricane. And it's very often when one has these earthquakes or volcanic eruptions, there's often tsunamis that often take place as well. Here you can see another one in Dundee. It's a stampless cover in the village of Bonningham and Leith as a port of Edinburgh, describing the earthquake that took place in Kirkcaldy, Scotland. A postpaid oval red marking is also noted as been applied. The cover was sent to Dundee, and one can see the original Dundee magazine also on the slide, dated 1801, being displayed. The earthquake that hit San Francisco in 1906, also a disaster, as we all know. 2 separate covers I'm showing you, dated 24 April 1906, from San Francisco to New York and to Seattle, Washington. The day of the quake, which was on 18 April 1906. No stamps were available at the time due to the massive destruction of the city and postal services. Postal services in New York, interestingly did not charge a 2-cent fee for the cover, but gave it a gratis reception. Postal services elsewhere did charge a 2-cent postage due stamp, as you can see on the 2 different covers that I show you. Incoming covers during this period of time are extremely rare, and I will show that hopefully on my second appearance down the road, which is also a very rare cover. But in either case, there were around 700 deaths in this earthquake directly, and there were 3 to 4 times more of that resulting from fires that took place in San Francisco area. There were losses of over $235 million at the time, which was equivalent in 2018 as over $6 billion. Again, lots of death and destruction. This is the 1923 earthquake in Japan. Very rare covers from this situation. These are postcards. The upper postcard was being written by a soldier that was on duty at that particular time during when the quake hit. The quake occurred on 1 September. His letter, I guess, was on the 5th, actually the 5th of September when he was writing the letter. 140,000 people died in this Japanese earthquake at the time. But the postal cards represent our rare overviews of the damage from a soldier writing, as I mentioned. Another cover on the lower cover basically is from the Kano earthquake, describing the destruction and sent on to Osaka, Japan on the 10th after the earthquake. Well, this was another earthquake that happened in in Long Beach, California. And it was during a special commemorative cover event taking place to honor the U.S. frigate Constitution in the Long Beach harbor. And this special U.S. frigate, Constitution, canceled, was applied, as you can see on the cover. The quake occurred, unfortunately, the same day at 5:45. Howard Kennedy and Cecil Adrian, the postal clerks who canceled its cover initially, canceled 225 of these covers. Short time earlier, were killed when the earthquake actually hit, just an hour or two later. On March 10th, 1933, similar covers I mentioned as above, 2 hours after the earthquake, showing the earthquake markings, and you can see California earthquake as the cancellation, which caused the death of the two postal clerks. What a sad story and happy event this was. There are earthquakes taking place virtually everywhere. Quakes in India, Karachi, Bombay. Generally, there was no stamps available, as not unusual when earthquakes happen to cause massive destruction. Here are two earthquake covers, both from the Quake earthquake in 1935. The earthquake struck on 31 May, much destruction, as I mentioned, in the city and suburbs, with as many as 60,000 deaths occurring. Another one in Santiago, Chile, the worst earthquake ever to strike anywhere in the world, 9.5 on the Richter scale. Devastation occurred all through Chile. An estimated 5,700 people died, and over $800 million in damage occurred. And you can see all the interesting markings on this cover, which makes it very interesting. Zona devastada. Much damage. In 1964, the second largest earthquake occurred in Alaska, and it struck Anchorage at 5:36 in the evening on Good Friday of all times, March 27, 1964. It was registered, actually the earthquake registered 9.2 on the Richter scale, and this was the second largest earthquake ever recorded, next to Chile in 1960. Fortunately, there were not a lot of deaths, but 131 deaths. If it was your family, that's a major disaster anywhere. And that was recorded in this particular devastated effect. And it was also followed by a tsunami. As I mentioned, many times you'll have earthquakes that will be followed by tsunamis. And we'll see another one shortly. But let's take a baseball break for a second and look at what happened during the World Series in California. 17 October 1989, okay, Melissa Fox drew two beautiful paintings on cover celebrating the World Series, where Oakland versus San Francisco. The game was postponed, and some 60,000 fans were evacuated from Candlestick Park during the game. The quake measured 6.9 on the scale, Richter scale. The third game of the World Series took place 10 days later on 27 October 1989, with Oakland winning the game. I'm not going to tell you who won the tournament between the Super Bowl, not the Super Bowl, but the World Series. In either case, I'm going to let you ask me that question later if you want. Anyway, two beautiful covers celebrating, not celebrating the event of a Super Bowl. I keep saying Super Bowl. World Series. I guess I got football a little too mixed up with baseball, but in either case. Another situation that took place, Germany sent a cover when Japan had their earthquake in 2011, and it was a devastating earthquake as well. It also registered 9 on the Richter scale, followed by a deadly tsunami, which also caused damage to the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Many of you probably remember that. There's still major issues with that power plant in Japan, and actually a lot of the water there is now contaminated with radiation. In either case, a 6-line cachet was applied to this cover, describing the interruption. And also you have a yellow DHL return label where the cover was sent back. Japanese tracking is on the label, which traces the cover through the Japanese postal system as it returns to Germany. There were around 20,000 deaths, and I think there's probably even more deaths since over the last 10 years or so that have taken place. Again, scarce covers, terrible, terrible situations. Well, let's talk a little bit about weather. This is one of the earliest known hurricanes and flood events that I have in my collection. It was 11 August 1795. It was a folded letter from Beausier, France to Marseille, and it was posted on August 11th. The departure delayed until the 13th because of the floods. The letter took 6 days to reach its destination during the wet weather. The journey would normally have taken a day. There was much flooding in Beausier that year, and this is the earliest recording flood delayed cover that I have in my collection, and it may be the earliest one recorded. Here's another flood in the Duck River area of Columbia, Tennessee. It was an interesting flood that took place on 15 February 1847, and it caused great destruction in that particular area, followed by a snowstorm, which made it even worse. It washed away the bridge. It also washed away their supplies of wood, damaging several mills and washing away thousands of barrels of corn, causing well over $500,000 in damage. And that was a lot of money at that period of time. It also knocked out 12 bridges in the general area. This is the Tay Bridge disaster in England on 28 December 1879 on a Sunday evening. A severe storm took place, causing the storm at Edinburgh, where a slow train took place over this particular bridge, which was a very fancy bridge, and it was one of the top bridges designed by certain architects during that period of time. Unfortunately, the bridge wore out during this event where they had the storm taking place. Anyway, the bridge violently swayed back and forth, but the train moved ahead slowly, almost like a movie, and it never made it to the other side of the tracks, and consequently, there were no tracks left or found. 3,000 feet to the bridge had disappeared with the train. Later that night, 2 bags of mail were washed ashore at the Brophy Ferry, which was 4 miles down from the river and bridge. All bear some type of handwriting inscriptions, but no transit or arrival strikes. This covers the only one known that did not originate in the British Isles. It was posted at Port Elizabeth, Cape Province. And on it is endorsed Walmer Castle in the upper left in a handwritten form. On the reverse is a manuscript, Sunday Tay Bridge, 28th, dear 1879. This is probably the rarest of the surviving covers, of which there are about 12 known. 59 deaths occurred in this incident, was accounted for. The bridge originally cost $6 million when it was finished in 1866. Another weather snowstorm. This is a little easier to describe. You can see the marking on it, where a snow blockade of 7 days delayed this response. This was in 1888 in Madison, Minnesota. Very interesting cover and a very interesting marking. You don't see that particular snow blockade marking. It's very scarce. This is the Houghton River disaster, where a mail cart in 1890 pulled by mules was pulling the mail between Kingston and the Amato Bay, and near Amato Bay in Jamaica. The river was so strong that the mules drowned as they were entering the water, and the cart was smashed. A small number of covers were recovered down the river a few days later by postal officers dispatched to recover the mail. A label on the back to the cover was applied by the General Post Office on February 21st, 1890. Fred Sullivan was the postmaster of Jamaica at the time, and a type label that basically explains exactly what I mentioned. It is possibly the only record of a wreck involving mules. Thought that was interesting. Well, there's other kinds of uninteresting wrecks that we can mention. And here's a landslide that blockaded the Scotia stagecoach, which forced the driver, George Thomas, to ford the 10-Mile Creek. And this was on November 20th, 1896. And while he was crossing the waters, they were found to be a little too swift and unforgiving, and the stage was overturned 6 miles away from Laytonville, California. The driver and the horses drowned. A label was affixed to salvage the mail, stating that the accident occurred on 16 November. This letter was recovered from a pouch, which was submerged in the stream until the 20th of November, 1896. The water damage caused the stamp to be lost and the letter illegible. This was an interesting cover. It was a wreck of the SS Labrador, which took place in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Anyway, it was a typical ship that hit some bad weather and completely wrecked. Labrador was a well-known ship at the time, and you can see the marking on there, recovered from wreck SS Labrador. I can go on and on and on with all these different ships, but I collected this because I collect interruptions of mail due to weather and dense fog, not because it was an era where one ship crashes into another. So I'm just showing this as one example of one of the covers that I have. Here you can see another cover, also transporting the train due to an avalanche. This was a cover going from New York to Australia, but the train was delayed actually as it went across country by an avalanche. And apparently it was more than one train that was involved. There was 2 trains involved together, burying the train in snow and ice, resulting in around 100 deaths, including 10 to 11 postal employees. Among the 2 trains that were involved, 9 pouches and 4 sacks of registered mail, mostly in good condition, and 25 pouches of ordinary mail, some ripped open, etc., were dried out in Wellington Depot. The avalanche occurred on March 1st in Wellington, Washington. Many trains were swept off the track, as I mentioned, and this one was delayed by the wreck February 22nd en route to Seattle. It did eventually get to Hobart, Tasmania. The trains were backed up for quite a while due to the terrible weather. Interesting markings on the front of the cover as to the delay. Well, we talked about the Titanic being hit by icebergs. Well, here's another one, almost around the same time, actually just before the Titanic, where icebergs hit the Yucatan in Alaska, and it ripped a hole in it, and I think that the ship sunk. The mail was forwarded ambulance covers. The post office department had prepared some of the covers that the mail in the envelope was delayed and damaged by the sinking of the steamer Yucatan at Goose Island, Icy Straits, Alaska, on 16 February 1910. The mail reached Seattle on the 24th of February 1910. The cover originated from Deadwood, Alaska. It's one of my favorite Alaska covers that I have in my collection. Anyway, nice post office ambulance covers also discuss the issues. 2 postcards from against another storm off of Alaska, damaged by the flood on October 3, 1913. It took 2 days after the storm to get the postal service up and running. All the mail that could be salvaged was sent off by next available steamer. It destroyed the population and businesses, sweeping the miners and equipment away. In 1914, the mail was reduced to weekly delivery in this particular town. And unfortunately, the town decreased in population and it was closed in 1925. It reopened in 28. It closed again in 56. Here I'm showing you a postal picture dated October 10th, 1913, showing the street damage. And the card states, "The river looks rough and I have on borrowed clothes and we are all right." Good thing he was all right. This is a interesting typhoon cover, very rare cover, from Switzerland via Siberia that went through China or went through Hong Kong and was severely damaged. Canceled by boxed Shanghai packet boat, damaged in typhoon. You can see right under the stamps, the marking. This is the only recorded cover to date, to my knowledge. Well, we can't talk about damages and special events and bad situations, but this was one of the bad situations involving the Zeppelin. And I know that pretty much everybody here is familiar with this particular wreck, the Hindenburg, which left Frankfurt, Maine on Germany to New York. It finally gets to New York in bad weather, and the gas from the balloon ignited with perhaps the electrical wires above and caused the damage and destruction of this famous blimp. 13 passengers and 22 crew, and one ground crew died. Remember, of the 17,000 pieces of mail that were on the board of the plane or the balloon, only 357 pieces were salvaged in burned condition. 147 of these were addressed to persons in the U.S. Others were addressed elsewhere in the world. And this happened to be a cover from Denmark to Ohio. This happens to be in my collection of one of the covers that I have on the Hindenburg. Very rare and very important piece of history. More damage also due to typhoons. This is a registered cover from Colombo, Ceylon to Vancouver, British Columbia. It was damaged on 2 September en route to Hong Kong by a typhoon. A 2-line magenta cancel was on the front cover, which I'm not showing, but it said received in damaged condition at Vancouver, British Columbia. On the back of the cover, you see all these labels, and there's manuscripts virtually on every one of these. Damaged by typhoon in Hong Kong. Also contents apparently intact on damaged post office labels. Over 11,000 people died in this particular disaster. You don't see tornado markings very frequent, very common, very rare, actually. This is a cover from Belmont to Hudson in Iowa, a 2-line stamped auxiliary marking damaged Belmont, Iowa, tornado 10/14/66. Almakaki County also suffered from this disaster. 6 deaths and 172 injuries occurred. It's a really unique and very clear auxiliary marking of this particular rare tornado. Well, you can't have interruptions of covers without political issues. And this is a very special political issue. This was basically the Greek Revolution in Greece, naturally. This was a cover from Hanoi, Indonesia, to Paris that got interrupted on its way through Greece. The political military coup had taken place to restore George II to the throne. A mailing itinéraire detour revolutionary marking was applied below the stamps, as you can see on the auxiliary markings on this particular very rare cover. Back stamp on the cover reached Paris on 15 July 1935. So it was several months delayed in its movement. But I didn't realize how rare this cover was until a Greek collector really told me about it. Well, they're all unusual events. This was a newspaper that was sent on 12 September 1881. And apparently a landslide wiped out this small little town in Switzerland. And the vintage, it killed 150 people, injuring over 200 people at this particular time. And Elm was a small town, small mountainous town, and unfortunately suffered major damage and destruction. Another unusual event were a mail wagon on April 28th at Pennsylvania Railroad Station in New York falls in the river. The newspaper account of the story stated that the driver Redmond of the mail coach left Grand Central about 7:35 in the evening and drove at a rapid gait to hope of catching the 8 p.m. boat that was leaving the gate at the time, at the ferry entrance. But he didn't notice that the ship actually pulled away from the dock at the time, and he was unable to stop his mail wagon as his team and horses fell into the river. The horses drowned, but the mail and the driver were recovered in damaged condition. I like to say were recovered in damaged condition, as the stamp had been washed away. You have a beautiful post office label was applied on the back of the cover, as you can see, describing the accident. Well, who thought your cover would be eaten by rats on the bottom of a steamer? Well, that's exactly what happened in this particular case in 1906. A cover was sent from the United Kingdom to Australia by steamer and was eaten by rats. Today, believe it or not, they even hire cats on some of these ships to get rid of the mice and the rats and the other situations that might exist. But you have to feed those cats, you know. This is the only recorded cover from this event. Interesting. I have an interesting collection of what's eating your mail. Some of you might have seen that. And this is one of my covers from that particular situation. Well, anything can happen in the mail. And this cover was stopped, interestingly enough, by the Metropolitan Police in Scotland Yard. On August 20th, 1974, an airmail cover from Valletta, Malta was sent to London. The cover contained lottery tickets, which made the cover a little bulky. This caused the Postal Security to check for explosives, and it was cleared by the Metropolitan Police. It is thought the adhesives may have been threatened. The addresses may have been threatened and was therefore checked for explosives. I thought this was a very interesting cover, and it's a great postal marking by the Postal Police, the Scotland Yard. Very interesting cover. This is also a very interesting cover. We all know about what happened in Russia when the nuclear disaster took place, and consequently, this was a cover that was headed to Finland, and it's kind of interesting. It was actually headed to the postal area telecommunications, the philatelic section, perfect for stamp collectors. Nice stamp collecting stamps, 22-cent stamps that came out years ago, and it has a nice marking on it: service temporarily suspended due to be returned to the sender. The Chernobyl accident that occurred on the 3rd of April, 1986, was a accident and one of the terrible nuclear fallouts that took place. Postal workers were given time off, and service in some areas completely suspended. The accident has been the most costly accident at the time, with an estimated cost of $200 billion. Unfortunately, over 125,000 people died from this reckless situation. The Chernobyl situation was by poorly designed nuclear technology, unfortunately. Terrorism. Well, we see a lot of terrorism today, unfortunately. This was a particular case where the Bulgarian Air Force, not having good relations with Israel at the time, in 1955, an L Air flight was from Netherlands on its way via London and then to Istanbul to Israel. But the plane apparently veered off course and was shot down by the Bulgarian Air Force. All occupants were killed at this particular time. And there was about 50 or 60 occupants, including crew, that unfortunately died. The covers show two Hebrew markings. The 3-line marking states the accident. The 1-line marking states no contents were found in the mail. Political differences, as I mentioned, between Bulgaria and Israel existed. During the investigation, apparently it was seen flying, being shot out of the air, but a Greek radio station picked it up and was burning apparently east of the Strymon Valley in Greece. Very sad situation that happened. Well, this is another interesting cover, Terrorism again in Cyprus, Greece. A cover mailed from New York around 12 October 1967 to Cyprus, landed in Athens, Greece. And at 4:30 that afternoon, it took off to Nicosia, and an hour later, it crashed near the Turkish coast near Castellora Rizo. The accident was caused by a time bomb and killed the 7 crew members and 59 passengers. Official tape on the back, as you can see on the lower portion. I had a bit better picture of it because you couldn't see it too clearly on the cover, as it had a lot of water damage. But you can see the Greek auxiliary marking, as I mentioned. The postage stamps had also been washed off, and it was very disturbing. As I mentioned, the 7 crew and 59 passengers were killed. On March 11, 1969, an Ethiopian airliner, a Boeing 707, departed from Athens, Greece to Frankfurt, Germany. It landed in Frankfurt International in good condition. And while the plane was on the ground in Germany, 2 bombs were apparently placed in the tourist class passenger compartments, and it exploded. However, some of the mail was on the plane, including this picture postcard, that survived this terrorist act. There were also several cleaning personnel that were injured. Some water damage is noted on the postcard due to this incident, but the Eritrean Liberation Front claimed responsibility, saying the bombings are retribution for the transportation of Ethiopian troops in Eritrea aboard Ethiopian aircraft. A Type 3-line German postal marking dated March 11, 1969 was applied, and a black double ring cancel, as you can see, was German's cancellation March 21st, 1969. The German translation was broadcasted, made by Los Sharby at the fire of flight of 702. This was no fault of the German Federal Post Office. Interesting cover. Here you can see 2 flight covers, Swiss Air flight to Zurich, Tel Aviv. A bomb hidden in the postal bag exploded. The pilot attempted to return to Zurich, but unfortunately could not make it. All 38 passengers and 7 crew were killed in this crash. And unfortunately, you can see the markings here in Hebrew and in German. One is a German cover and one is a Swiss cover represented. Here you can see another airliner, the Japanese airliner route to Tokyo was skyjacked by Palestinians on roughly the 7th of July, 1973. Passengers were liberated and the plane was blown up. The Dutch covers were accompanied by an official post office letter from the Utrecht district describing the incident in Dutch. It's reduced 75% on your left. This was the only known cover to exist from this particular situation. It belonged to W.S. von Otterbeck, who was a big collector of interruptions of mail, who passed away several years ago. This was one of his covers. Another incident in 1977, a local registered letter within Pretoria, South Africa, was interrupted by a terrorist letter bomb in a mail bag while in transit. Local postmaster's explanatory letter accompanies the return of the cover. Very few covers are known. And here's the official letter from the Postal Service. Another cover, another flight, 444. Interestingly enough, this was the Unabomber cover that was on its way from Chicago to Washington, D.C. on 12 November 1979. On board the flight, a bomb went off in the aircraft on its way to Washington, D.C. This letter was particularly addressed to medical area information on liver disease. In either case, they were all enclosed in original plastic envelopes. An original letter by the postal inspector, T.J. Korber, dated November 1970, explains the explosion that took place. Fortunately, it did not explode. It caught fire on the plane. The plane unfortunately made an emergency landing at Dulles Airport. Fortunately, no one was hurt on this particular situation, but there was a lot of smoke damage, and consequently, some people may have gotten sick. The FBI finally caught Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. He was caught in Denver at a mountain home somewhere. And he was caught by he was caught by his brother, who recognized the dissertation article that he wrote many years ago. He apparently hated the world and certainly hated the United States for whatever reason. There were a number of bombings by Kaczynski. There was about 4 deaths. I think there was about 17 different bombing covers that he sent out, mostly to people that were representing universities and educators. There are about a dozen of these covers that are now recorded. This is an interesting cover on Flight 007. What was Flight 007? It was a cover that was sent out on 1 September 1983, and it was carrying Congressman Lawrence P. McDonald. And consequently, there is no mail that survived this disaster. The USSR shot down the Korean civilian airliner 007. I like that number, 007. But in either case, it was in such deep water where the plane landed into the water, thousands of feet. Nothing was covered. Not even scrap metal was covered. And it was all over 269 passengers, including crew that died, including the Congressman Lawrence P. McDonald. This was actually a terrorist assassination based on this particular congressman. And what we're seeing here is a memorial service that took place in his memory. And when I saw that, I didn't even know about the crash until I saw this memorial invitation that I was able to acquire. Very interesting. Well, we all know about the Lockerbie. The Lockerbie cover was one of the biggest disasters, airmail disasters and bombing in airmail postal history. On December 19th, 1988, from Lakenheath to England, the damaged envelope was sent to Lubbock, Texas. Well, this is one of 10 surviving covers from the terrorist bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 at Lockerbie, Scotland. Pan Am 103 crashed at Lockerbie, resulting from a bomb explosion in a cargo compartment, resulting from the effects of a Libyan terrorist. All 259 passengers and crew, as well as 11 people on the ground, were killed. The postal officials applied the label on the reverse reading, "This letter was delayed due to the air disaster of Pan Am Air Flight 103 at Lockerbie, Scotland on 21 December 1988. Libyan Abdel Basset Al-Megan was tried and found guilty of mass murder in 2001, 12 years after the incident. Interestingly enough, he was to serve basically life sentence, but he didn't. Apparently, he complained that he was dying and apparently had political scenarios to get him out of jail. He did die a few years after that. Unfortunately, he never completed his sentence of life imprisonment, which was very, very sad. This is an unknown cover from the Lockerbie. This is the only known cover that was actually in a diplomatic pouch. And again, the explosion took place around 31,000 feet. So there wasn't too much mail recovered, but this was in a locked suitcase, a locked diplomatic pouch. And it was interesting because apparently it was an air letter that was sent by the writer via the courier to his corporate office in Canada, and there the onward mailing, as no direct airmail service existed between Ethiopia and South Africa. That's where this cover was originally addressed. But following the disaster, the courier case was found and retained for investigation. It took some 6 months prior to forwarding this particular letter. Again, a very terrible situation. And we all know that Appleby, a U.S. dealer in Philadelphia, was on this flight and was killed, unfortunately. And I still send my deepest regrets and sympathy to the family. Well, a little lighter, not so much lighter, but on the 27th of 1989, an Avianca flight from Bogota, Colombia exploded and was destroyed in 5 minutes after taking off. The bomb was put on board by the drug cartel to kill a high official of the Colombian police. Spanish auxiliary marking seen in red, Indio Rescatado del Accidente Avian. Anyway, mail found lying near the airplane wreck, flight HK 1803. Very interesting cover. There are a few of these known. Well, here are a few of my references. I think I have many more, which we will supply to Joan. And I want to thank all the philatelic, all for your philatelic time and interest, and certainly the British Empire Study Group. I'd also want to thank my loving wife for putting up with me for all these years, 57 years, interestingly enough. And she can't look at another stamp, she tells me. In either case, I'm only kidding. But I also want to thank my grandson, Landon Spitzer, who helps me with all my computer situations, because I'm an old timer and I just don't know how to use it except turning it on. But I really appreciate his help. I couldn't do it without him. And I want to thank all the dealers that helped me find these different covers. This is only a small section of about 1,500 in my collection, all geared to this particular area. And again, I want to thank the British Empire Study Group, and I want to thank everybody listening to me. I hope I didn't bore you too much, and I thank you for your time. And certainly welcome any questions, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That was awesome, simply awesome. And Landon, thank you. I mean, I know I see your hand in this, and this is really great. I'm going to bring some people over right now. So if you'd like priority, please raise your hand. And Rob, if you could lead the Q&A, if you would.
Thank you for that really interesting presentation, Steve. That was very different. Okay, we have a question from a friend of mine, Clive Levinson. He wants to know, what are facing slips?
Facing slips were actually slips to be placed on mailbags. They were special, to redirect the mailbag. And they were all stamped with the thing of the Titanic marking, the postal marking. Interestingly enough, like I mentioned, there's maybe anywhere between 12 and 20 of these facing slips, but they're pretty rare. And that's what they were for. And The postmaster was trying to save it, and that's why they were in his breast pocket when he was pulled out of the water. I hope that pretty well covers it.
All right. A question from Adrian Pearson. When was the Hiroshima cover placed into the lead sleeve? If it's after the bomb, how did it survive in the first place? If it was before the bomb, why was it placed that way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I saw this cover for the first time in May. I didn't even know it existed. And how they picked up the cover, you know, they were all wearing, I would assume, a certain clothing to repel the radiation. And it was picked up, and I can't give the history about it, other than seeing it for the first time. But they did tell me it was still radioactive, even though the radiation was not too bad at that particular time when it was put into the sleeve. But it's in the museum in Germany.
Okay.
I hope that's the best I can answer that. You know,
Right.
it was probably picked up not knowing it was radioactive. I mean, that would be my guess, but I don't know what the actual situation was.
Doug Combs is asking if many of the covers that you have still retain their contents.
Some of them do, most of them do not. Yes. It's nice when you can get the contents, but many times the contents really have very little to do with the situation.
Okay. I have a question for you, Steve. A lot of these covers that we've seen have got some really specific stampings on them, you know, rubber stamps saying,
Yes.
you know, that was about that event or so quickly.
I lost your, would you say that again? I lost it for some reason.
Okay. I've got a shaky internet connection. It's showing up.
Mhm.
A lot of the covers had specific stamps on them. I mean, rubber stamps showing, you know, talking about either the disaster or a location or whatever. How does a post office put a rubber stamp like that together so quickly?
Very easily. I mean, they have equipment, I guess, in the postal division. Certainly, the main post office has the ability to put up a rubber stamp within minutes, I guess. They
Okay.
can print it out, and doesn't take too long. I mean, you can go out and buy rubber stamps now and have little equipment in your office to make rubber stamps for, let's say, business purposes. So the Postal Service has all that equipment, and it doesn't take that long to make them. It's just understanding what kind of stamp or what kind of label they're going to put on the cover at the time. So,
All
yes.
right. All right. Do we have any questions from the audience yet?
Yes, I have one.
I'm listening.
Okay. Am I on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. This is Ken Sanford.
Hey, Karen.
If anybody is interested, we have a society called the Wreck and Crash Mail Society. We have a journal quarterly, and we have articles about air crashes, shipwrecks, train wrecks, and all of the areas that Steve covers in his Devil's Mail. So if anybody is interested, our website is www.wreckandcrash.org.
And we're always looking for new members, Ken.
Yeah, we've got about 80 members worldwide at the moment.
Thank you, Ken. Marketing always helps.
I still haven't finished bringing everyone over, but I did get a question beforehand, and it's from someone, and I thought I knew the answer, but I know there's some people who will know. When you're judging this wreck and crash mail, so they ask, well, do you get extra points, like when you compare the exhibits by the amount of destruction or the number of deaths? And I was like, I don't think that's a factor in judging, but I would ask you in person.
No, I don't think it's a factor. It's just I put it in my data, on my covers. I don't worry about the judges examining what I have. I like to put things down. If I exhibit it my way, not necessarily based on the judging rules. Many times I will exhibit non-competitive. So regardless of that, I don't think it really makes that much difference to the judges, perhaps, but it makes differences to people that want to see these covers without necessarily having the rules of the judges.
Yeah.
I hope that explains my my overall action.
I know it really does. That was just when I was looking through and adding it up, I was like, I could understand their point, because your exhibit represents a lot of billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah, the damage that occurs in the Postal Service is immense worldwide. And I give the postal, not just the postal inspectors, but all the employees. There's thousands of employees that have died within the service, whether it be from terrorism, robbery, disease, God knows whatever else might be there that causes the death of some of the Postal Service employees. But thousands have died worldwide delivering the mail, and I salute them all.
Okay, I've made the first round of people.
It's nice to see a few friends on the pictures. Thank you for attending.
No
Steve.
question? There you go.
Steve, the presentation was tremendous,
Thank you.
and such a wide variety of subjects. My mind immediately goes to, how do you find the time to do all the research?
That's a good question. I put my wife to work. A lot of the research is associated with the covers. Good thing for Google and Wikipedia, where you can find some of this material rather quickly. But you can only write so much on a cover that you're maybe exhibiting, or not necessarily exhibiting, but in your collection. Otherwise, you could be typing for pages or putting them in a book. And now that I'm talking about a book, I'm planning on a book called The Devil's Mail. And I'm hoping to get that out within the next couple of years, if possible, because right now I'm working on a mail robbery book, postal history. So I'm keeping myself alive by trying to write these darn things and get them out while I still can.
Wow.
So anybody
Be
wants
able to lift
let
these
me know.
books up?
I'm sorry?
Will we be able to lift these books?
Well, I'm only going to have one copy. I've got to keep it, rather short, just like some of the slides that I've shown. Because you can write chapters on virtually anything that I showed, and just to take a summary of it is about the best I can do for a book. As long as I can have the references there, that if that specific interests you, that specific topic interests you, then you'll at least have the area where you can look it up and get further information. That's about the best I think you can do today, because there's so much going on in the world. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and it satisfies my curiosity. I've seen some of your material before and always enjoyed it. It's such a shame that I'm so far away and I don't travel anymore, so I never get to see whose collections I really appreciate.
Thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate that. Send me your email and I'll send you some.
Right.
Send you some covers.
Okay. My email is easy.
Okay.
Mike?
We'll give it to Joan and I'll get it.
Right.
Tony,
I'll give it to John's got it anyway.
Yeah, Joan has it.
I'm sure she can pass it on to you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'll definitely do that.
Thank you.
Frank, you have a question there.
More like a comment. First of all, thank you very much for your wide variety of covers. One of the slides you had a cover, and you said it was from Hanoi, Indonesia.
Yes,
Well, those are not in the same location.
I know.
Hanoi was part of Indochina,
Excuse
and
me.
Indonesia is the islands, way far south of that.
Thank you for correcting me. You're right.
I just have a friend who happens to collect Vietnam, and he goes back into the Indochina period. So
Yeah, I'll change that on my slide, but you're correct. Thank
other
you.
than that, very nice, very well done.
Yeah, that was a very interesting cover on the Greek coup. So it's a very special cover. So as you saw, it's a great postmark on those stamps showing the coup. Thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
Looks like a question from Felix Luis Perez, Bolch Jr.
Yes, hello from Mississippi. Great presentation. I really enjoy the cover you shared from Melissa Fox, because if you tell my background, I collect Roberto Clemente, and the left side of the cover, Cancel October 17, included the 1984 stamp dedicated to Clemente. So that's a good addition to my exhibit, because Clemente, he passed away in 1972 to help Nicaragua with the earthquake situation. And then 5 years later, 1989, his stamp was used during the earthquake for a day cancellation of the World Series. So that's a good connection. So I really appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Who won the game? Who won the game
Oakland.
between Oakland? You're right. Oakland won 4 straight in a row for the World Series that year. So I thought it would be a little lighter to talk about the World Series versus the earthquake that took place. But thank you also about the ball player, great ball player. Thank you.
Well, I think I brought everyone over. If I missed you, please raise your hand and I will certainly bring you over very quickly. Duncan, I'm jumping right in.
Any other questions or comments?
I really appreciate your attendance tonight. You never know who you're going to talk to. And I really appreciate all the faces that I see on the screen. See a bunch of friends here. And I really enjoy collecting what I do. I'm from a stamp collector to a postal history collector. I collect, like I said, very unusual topics. And it keeps me happy, keeps me traveling. As long as I'm healthy, I'm going to keep going forward. So and hopefully all of us will as well. But again, I want to thank everybody that took the time to hear my story, you might say, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Tony, you have another question. Steve, that was fantastic, by the way. I'm looking forward. We're bringing Steve back in March because there was just no way we could cover all of the disasters. And I think each one is fascinating. And we didn't want him to zip through all of the material because that would be, you'd be leaving people wanting. So we broke this down into 2 parts. So in March, I think we have that scheduled for you to come back.
Well, we'll certainly try to do that in March, that's for sure. Okay.
Tony, you have a question?
Every one of us, I think, would love to just have one of those covers. And but then of course after you're looking at them all, you suddenly then start to think about all of the destruction and that is surrounded and all the lives that have been affected by, where this is the evidence of what has happened in history.
it is really quite an incredible collection. And I think, and personally, I would be very happy to get a copy of your book when this comes out.
Mhm.
Thank you
so
very much.
hard to imagine, you know. Excellent. Thank you.
Alex Walker.
Hi. Hi there. Yeah, just a quick comment, just from Bonnie, Scotland here. I'd like to see your Tay Bridge disaster. That was quite an incident when the bridge fell in the water in a storm and the train went in. And
Yes.
good to see that one. And then, of course, the other Scots connection, the dreadful Lockerbie incident. I mean, that was one in my memory, and a very big event here in Scotland. Yeah. So thank you very much. It's midnight, and I'm heading for bed. Quick dram. Here's to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Have a drink on me, and thank you for staying up so late.
Thank you. Wow. So there's so much in there, Steve, that I was just blown away.
I appreciate everybody's interest, and I'm very happy to present this to everyone anytime. And I'm always open to emails and questions. So Joan can give that to you if you need it. And if you ever see me at a show, please stop me and tell me that you saw my presentation. That would make me even happier, I think. But I'm
jump in.
part of the program.
Okay. You have a question?
Yes, I'm just wondering, Steve, if you have anything in your collection from the Halifax explosion, or if you're familiar with the Halifax explosion.
I'm not quite familiar with that.
That's when the ammunition ship collided with another vessel in the Halifax harbor. I should remember the year. I think it's around 1917.
Okay.
Basically destroyed Halifax.
Yeah, we did a big article about that in our journal, La Catastrophe, from the Wreck and Crash Mail Society, about maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had any covers from that.
I can't remember if the article showed any covers or not.
We can check for you. Ken can check for you. If we do,
you can email me. You can email me, and I'll look it up for you. My email is KAERO, P as in Peter, HIL at gmail.com.
I don't really collect anything from that. I'm just very familiar because I'm originally from the East Coast, and of course, the Titanic's got a major graveyard, burial grounds in Halifax.
Yeah, I think there might have been some covers. I'll have to check the article.
Yeah, I had long lost relatives and stuff that were involved with that had shrapnel in them and stuff like that. I just thought maybe it was something you would have come across. There's probably actually quite a bit of it around because the post office was still functioning and stuff. And
sometimes the covers are not marked, and that could be a major issue as well. They can just
be everyday mail, and so from the period, really.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, well, thank you. Enjoyed this very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. If there's anything that you might like me to show next time, I'll put it on my #2 presentation down the road. Like I said, I have quite an extensive collection of over 1,500 pages of this material. Not books, but 1,500 pages. That's certainly one book, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But in either case, I guess it'll be a picture book kind of thing, if and when I get to do that. Right now, I'm trying to get the mail robbery. And if anybody has any mail robbery postal history in their possession, I would greatly appreciate a photocopy so I can give you credit in my book for it. That would be great too. There's going to be
So how are we going to get this book when you've published it in a year or two's time?
Well, I'm sure it'll be marketed to a certain extent. But if you have a specific area, let me know now, and I'll make sure it comes in that direction.
No, I don't obviously have any of this type of mail. But it would be a wonderful reference to have. You know, it's a wonderful reading. It would be just to just even seeing the slides again and being able to read about them would be fascinating item to have.
Thank you.
We'll try to publicize it.
I buy
Yeah.
books on that principle as well. I'm sorry, Joan. Sorry, Joan.
Oh, we'll try to publicize it when it comes out, Stephen. And Ken, what we'll do is I'll hook up with you after this, and when the follow-up email goes out, we'll put the Wreck and Crash Mail link in your email if you don't mind. That way,
Yeah,
anyone
that's good.
interested,
Yeah, great.
we'll have a contact.
That'd be great.
Terry, you have a. I see some-
Just when you're talking about robbery in the mail, I've actually just, if I can just hold that.
It's hard to
Can
see.
you read that? Robbery of the mail.
Oh,
It's from the General Post Office in Edinburgh on the 1st of August, 1802, where the postboy carrying the mail from Falkirk to Edinburgh was, about 3 o'clock this morning, attacked by 2 men on foot near a place called the West of Sighthill, 3 miles west of Linlithgow. And they took the bags of mail from all these places that are listed on it. I can send you a copy of that.
If you would send a copy to Joan Harmer, I'll get a copy. That's wonderful. And as you probably know, that mail robbers in 1802 usually suffered hanging when they were caught. Kind of interesting, but they're great covers. I have a document for the U.S. Postal Service that's
on my.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have a cover or a document actually that I purchased recently, dated 1794, which is the second year of the U.S. Postal Service, where it actually has death to mail robbers. And that's why I purchased that rare document at the time. But the Brits did hang people frequently late 1700s and early 1800s for mail robbery. It's very interesting. Maybe we should consider doing some of that today because it's so terribly common. But the covers are not common. That's the interesting thing.
I don't think I have any covers.
Well, just the document you have is wonderful. I'd love to have a copy of it and put it in my book.
Right, yeah. Well, I'll get a hold of that. I may have to take a photograph of it rather than scan it. I don't think it'll run the scanner, but we'll see.
If you have a cell phone, yeah, a cell phone might help work.
One of the other things that I did notice on your display, which was great, by the way, over here in Scotland, we kind of differentiate between England and Scotland. And, well, the Tay Bridge disaster, etc., Dundee, they're all in Scotland, not in England. One of the other things I did notice was there was at least 3 different spellings of Edinburgh in the write-up there. One of them was right.
Well, I'll have to go check my spelling, but I appreciate you pointing that out to me. So wherever I have it on the pages, I will get the dictionary out and make sure I get the right spelling.
I was seeing some comments throughout. It already have some changes in the books done already. So
it depends on what dictionary you get, the real dictionary or the American English dictionary on the spelling.
Oxford.
That's true. So.
Wow. John, you're quiet, John Spencer.
To change the subject just a little bit, I was wondering whether your grandson, who helps you out with your computer challenges, what does he collect?
Landon, what do you collect?
Unfortunately, I don't really have any collections of my own at the moment, but I mean, obviously this has opened up a whole nother world to me about philatelic history and the collection of mail covers and everything like that. So, I mean, definitely going forward. I have a couple mail covers. I went to a convention with my pop-up over the summer, maybe last year. Started up a small collection already. So, yeah.
We're working on them. We're working on them.
We need younger blood. That's one of the reasons I'm asking, because we're all getting so ancient now that it's like waiting for the big day where we all go to heaven.
Yeah. Mike, are you still living in Thailand?
Yes.
I keep asking you to find covers for me there. There's got to be some good covers.
Well, it's tough, and I've never ever found a tsunami cover. I don't think they exist.
That's interesting. That was a hell of a disaster at the time. You know.
It certainly was.
Thank you for coming online tonight. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yes, I know. I'm fortunate in so much as through Joan's efforts and the Zoom presentations, I get to see quite a number of people that I haven't seen for many, many years. Unfortunately, I stopped traveling in 2016, so I don't get about as much as I used to, which curtails me because I hate being desk bound, and I want to get out. The benefits of shows are the interactions between dealers and customers and dealer to dealer, and without doubt the social aspect of it are something that I miss very badly, but I can't do anything about it. So we've now got at least Zoom.
Keep the chin up and keep watching on Zoom. And it's great to see
Yes,
you.
I'll do that.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
I'm happy enough, but I still like to have a little moan because I used to get some nice privilege off from the airlines. Now I can't benefit from the luxury and the pampering.
Steve.
Hi, sorry it took so long to bring you over.
Steve, just a question with the current situation that's happening with the Ukraine circumstances. Are you acquiring philatelic material of that conflict now, or
I have not seen anything yet. No.
I was wondering in this sort of situation whether you sort of would be actively acquiring, or whether it's when it's finished, you then find mail or find material after it's finished or whilst it's happening, you know.
I haven't seen anything to this point in time, Tony, at all. So I'm sure something is going to exist down the road. And
I can remember a friend of mine who had a very good World War II collection, and he very proudly showed me one night on Skype that there was a small German town that he had postal history for that, and then he had a mail that was American mail the next day. And then the next day it was, or the next couple of days, it was back in German hands. And he had mail from that. And it was the changing circumstances of the war as it went along. And he actually had it over quite a long period as things flipped and flopped backwards in various ways. And it was quite intriguing to see that such material existed. You know, you'd think
Well, that's it. I haven't really found anything really from the one in Japan when they had the damage to the nuclear situation there. But interestingly enough, there's something will be coming along. And even in 9/11, there's only one cover that's known from 9/11 when the planes hit the buildings in New York.
Well tried.
Actually, there are two known.
Well, there are two known, but they're both questionable, to be frank with you. But assuming there are two, everything was pretty well destroyed.
Yeah, they were found on the street near there.
Yes, one was mailed back, Ken. I know that it was mailed back, but
they were both from Maine, because the mail was going from Maine down to Boston to connect to the flights out of Boston. So we don't know which one it was from. Those two covers, can't tell which aircraft they're from.
One was supposedly mailed back from London, from what I understood.
Yeah, I don't know about that. The two that I've seen are from Maine to California.
Okay. In either case, they're very rare, and I'm surprised that the post boxes that were in the area weren't marked at that particular time during that disaster in New York.
Zach, welcome.
You show up.
Sorry, Steve.
Hey, Pop Up, I just wanted to
That's
say.
my grandson. He's
Yeah.
somewhere.
Oh, come on. I got excited. I was like, another young collector. This is great.
Just wanted to come in. I'm in Madrid. I had trouble getting in, but I finally got in. I got to see most of the presentation. It was fascinating. I learned a ton. So thanks for doing that. It was great to watch.
See, I got two grandsons. I got a couple more. I've got to get them all starting to collect.
Yeah, I've got my few from the convention we went to earlier.
Okay. I try, believe me, I try. Joan, I think maybe any other questions or comments? I love that. I got time.
I see Leslie and I see John. So which one wants to go?
Leslie's my daughter.
Oh, gosh. Leslie has to speak then.
I don't see myself on video, so I don't know if you can see me. And I'm here with my son, my dad's other grandson. And we love this. I was watching on and off while at the gym and in the car listening on my ride home. And I love seeing Landon and Zach and, of course, my dad and all of you on here. So fascinated by all that he's doing. It is fascinating, and we're very proud of him. We love you.
Love you. Love you all.
Leslie, thank you for joining.
Hey, Parker.
Yes.
Hello, Joe.
Hey.
Okay, John, you had a question? I think your hand was raised first.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. A few moments ago, you were talking about covers from the Ukraine. Well, I have a friend in Ukraine, and he sent me this. This is I think it was a sort of charity cover, and it's showing. I don't know how well you can see this. Can you see that?
Yes.
It's a soldier carrying a small dog, and that was used to sniff out mines, I guess.
Bombs, yeah.
Very attractive cover, but the interesting thing about it is it has two Ukrainian cancellations, and then over the top you can't read it, but we had to use up all our stamps with the Queen's head on it, and the British Post Office has put a label, a slogan on there, say use your stamps by such and such a date. So that's the Ukrainian cover.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. Appreciate it. That's a terrible war going on. I know.
Duncan, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Adrian Pearson had two comments, one of which I was going to make. I agree with both of them, so we won't talk about them. If you'd like to send any of the things about ships to me, I can fact check them for accuracy.
Thank you. Good. Does Joan have your information?
Yeah,
Yes.
I will get you guys in touch. I'll make a note now. Duncan has amazing facts. So, you know, I would not want him as a thesis advisor, put it that way.
Oh, no, I'd be on your side then. It's if I'm the outside adjudicator that you don't want me.
Okay, see, what did I say?
And on judging, quite likely the information on rarity is relevant, but the information on the number of deaths is probably not a judging factor.
I understand.
The person that asked that question was not a philatelist, and for some reason they had in their brain that when we judged, they were judging all these the crash mails on like who had the biggest tally at the end. And I'm like, no, that's not, you know, one, philately isn't all about crash mail, and two, no, we don't take totals of people impacted by a disaster.
And condition for crash covers is almost a reverse scale. The nastier it is, the better we like it.
It's nice when you can find a clean cover.
Yeah. This cover was found pristine after an air crash. Is a sort of a boring cover.
It doesn't show the history. That's interesting because the Hiroshima cover really looked pretty like it was brand new when I showed it, and when I saw it, I thought it was very interesting. I'm trying to think of the auction house that had it on display there. Started with a K. I can't think of the name offhand. A German auction company. But they did a beautiful brochure that was sent out to the people that did register for that stamp show in Germany, and it was a pretty busy show. They had about 150 dealers there, but believe it or not, I couldn't find anything that I collected there. I thought it was very interesting. With all those dealers, I couldn't really find anything special. So, but I still enjoy the show regardless. I mean, whether I find something or not. If nothing else, I get to meet some friends. So that's always good.
Yeah, and if it's not from really close to ground zero, it's quite possible that things would survive.
Yeah. It's amazing that that piece of mail actually sees daylight today. So very interesting. That's why I showed it, because I'm sure probably no one attending tonight knew anything about it for the most part. So that's why I showed it and put it in my thing.
How is the museum where it's housed?
That's a good question. That's one question I didn't ask. What museum is it at? I don't know the museum that it's at, but I can find out.
Well, it isn't so much the museum, but how are they protecting the public against the?
Well, supposedly the radiation that's there now is not an issue for anybody. That's what I was told. So I have to assume that that's correct.
Well, radiation from knowledge has got a half-life. So it's never, ever going to be completely clean.
The cover just glows at night. It's quite safe, you know.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully.
When the devil comes out, is that correct?
Well, that's part of my talk.
Yes.
It's part of my talk. And I love Joan's new hairpiece that she's just displaying right now. Anyway, I want to thank everybody. I know it's getting late, and I really have enjoyed talking to everyone. And certainly, I welcome any notes or emails. Go through Joan, perhaps, and I'll be happy to respond. And I just want to thank everybody for attending. I think it was great.
Thank
Really.
you. And we're looking forward to part 2. And we will definitely share information about your book and any other talks that you're having, because it's so fantastic.
Thank you, Joan. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak on behalf of the British Postal History Society, the Empire Group, and look forward to doing it again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All
Wishing
right.
everybody health and happiness. Have a good day. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for all your family members for joining in this.
Yes.
Well, I had to make
Especially
sure
Landon.
someone was listening to me.
I think it was wonderful that you had your grandsons there. I think it's spectacular.
Yeah. They'll be collecting stamps. Even if they have to inherit money, they'll be collecting stamps.
Terms and conditions, right? The will, right?
That's right.
So-
Okay. Thank you again. Thank you again, Joan. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you. Fantastic.
Thank you for everybody. Okay. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Good night, Steve.
Good night. Good
Good
night,
night.
Grant.
Good night.
Night. Thank you. That was amazing.
Okay.